Organizing global efforts, strategies for steering the education sector. For this session, we have with us Mr. Amit Khare, Joint Secretary, Ministry of Human Resource Development, Government of India, as the session chair. Shri Khare has over 27 years of experience in government, including HRD, Revenue, Finance, and General Administration. He was Director of Primary Education, Government of Bihar, Secretary of Human Resource Development for Government of Jharkhand, and also in charge of Vice Chancellor of Ranchi University. He graduated with honors in physics from St. Stephen's College, Delhi, and followed it up with a PG Management from IEM, Ahmedabad. We have with us Dr. Pascal Chazet. He is about to join us on the dais. He was present in the inaugural session. Dr. Govind, Senior Director, DEITY, Ministry of Communications and IT, and CEO of National Internet Exchange of India. Dr. Govind is also about to join us very soon. We have with us Mr. Vimal Vaklu, Chairman and Managing Director of Telecommunications Consultants India Limited, TCIL. TCIL is a primary engineering and consulting company which is wholly owned by the Government of India. We also have with us Dr. Ashwini Kumar Sharma, Managing Director of National Institute of Electronics and Information Technology. With this, I hand over the session to our session chair, Mr. Amit Khare. Thank you.
Good afternoon to all of you. Friends, we were supposed to start at 11:30 and we are delayed by more than an hour and 10 minutes. Before I come to this session, let me make two quick observations, not directly related to the subject at hand, but in a way, it may be of relevance to all of us. Firstly, in today's world, time is of utmost importance. All of us who have assembled here, the most valuable thing that we are contributing is our time. And second, of course, is the use of technology. Now, having said that, what I propose is, I had prepared a long presentation of 18 slides. I don't wish to inflict that on you, knowing fully well that time is short, but I'll use technology and mail it to all of you who have given your email address to the organizers. The other submission which I have in consultation with fellow panelists, that the panel members would speak for about 5 to 8 minutes each. We would try to put forward our views before you in about 40 minutes, and let us have discussion for 20 minutes. Because it should not be a one-way affair. When we talk of global context, when we talk of use of technology, it should not be the old lecture theater type of a system where people sitting on the desk or people sitting on some other forum, they appear to be more knowledgeable than those in the audience. Situation today could very well be the other way around. With this brief introduction, let me just put forward a few points for your consideration, particularly because the session starts with the global context. First and foremost is the global commitment to education. Tomorrow there is a session on education for all, the Millennium Development Goals, which were to be achieved by 2015. I suppose they will be discussed, and the Global Monitoring Report of UNESCO, which is released every year, will also be a subject matter of discussion. There is another reality which my former minister, who was here with you in the morning, used to keep telling us, the shift from agriculture to industry, manufacturing services, and now to the knowledge society. What is becoming of paramount importance is creation of knowledge. The wealth of nations is judged by the intellectual property they have and not by their physical or mineral wealth. A third reality is the integration of societies and countries. We have manufacturing in one place, the user may be at some other place, the workforce may be coming from a fourth country, and that means that whatever education and skill development that we wish to have must be of comparable standards, must be such that it can be translocated from one region to another. There is also an issue of changing demographics across the globe, which means that certain countries will be requiring workforce and some other countries or regions will be supplying them. This is happening within India, this is happening across borders. And last, but perhaps the most important, is the use of technology. Somehow, the power of technology, which was not recognized by us for a long time, is now being recognized all over the world, whether it is the MOOCs or the open sources of learning, reaching out to the remotest corner. It is possible through technology. I would, as I said in the beginning, restrict myself because we would like our fellow panelists to contribute and then also listen to many of you who would like to intervene. But I just wanted to put things in some perspective. These are the realities, the challenges, if you say before India, they are well known. The enrollments have increased, but today we have around 18.8% enrollment in higher education, the gross enrollment ratio, which is still far below the world average of around 26%. And by the time we reach 30% in 2020, which is our vision, the world average too would have moved up to around 30%. There is also a very important question of quality. It's not, nowadays, it does not matter the qualification that you have, but the quality of the qualification or the quality of skills that you possess. The entire focus now is to build quality at all levels. And therefore, as many of you may have read in the plan document and other places, the focus is now shifting from input-centric systems to the learning outcome-based systems. In the olden days, we used to, whether we are in the academia or in the industry, have to work together. Realizing all these factors, some of the initiatives which have been taken by the government may not have been all that successful. One, of course, is the well-known use of the National Knowledge Network, and now almost 400 universities and 18,000 colleges of this country are connected to each other. There is, of course, a great challenge of content, because connectivity is only the hardware part. The soft part is the content, whether we can provide the best inputs, and that also in a sequential fashion to the students who could be either young ones who are entering the university or the higher education system, or they could also be relearners, because in today's society, as against the past, where we used to graduate in one discipline and continue for lifelong, there is now a concept of lifelong learning. People are shifting their professions, people are trying to learn new techniques. In fact, a very old relative of mine was asking my children to teach her how to use email and Skype. At the age of 80, she wanted to learn how to use email and Skype. So these are the changes which are coming. There is a great need of investment in technology, because technology is the only way we can approach the remotest areas. We can provide quality. We talk of quality, immediately we get focused on the top 200 or top 500 institutions, but can we provide quality to all? In fact, in one of the meetings earlier, an issue was raised that we say education for all. Actually, it should be quality education for all. It's not only important that we provide education, it should also be of quality. And a great intervention of quality will be through technology. I would, as I said earlier, stop at this moment. And may I request Mr. Wakhlu, who is CMD of TCIL, to give his observations. my distinguished panelist has joined now. We have decided that we'll restrict ourselves to 5 to 8 minutes and have an interaction for about 20 minutes later.
Thank you, Mr. Khare. Well, first of all, let me thank all the organizers for giving me this opportunity of sharing my thoughts with all of you over here. Well, Mr. Khare has broadly summed up the whole scenario. I would give a little different perspective, although there would be intersections at times. Of course, all of us are aware that education as such is a great enabler. It's a major tool for bridging the digital divide, which we keep talking about. And education is also a great leveler. Imagine, a few years back, we would have never thought that a person like Obama can become the President of the United States of America, the most powerful person in the world. This happened just because of education. So, given the opportunity, any person from any part of the world has the potential of reaching heights, scaling heights. So, education is a must for inclusive growth. Now, when we talk about harmonizing global efforts, strategies for steering education system, when it comes to the developed world, they have things in place and the challenges are less over there. But when it comes to developing nations, we are faced with a major challenge. Like, let's start with India, my country, a developing nation. Starting with the primary education, there are about 1.2 billion people. 70% of the population lives in villages, and there are 637,000 villages. Even one school per village is a tall order. You need 637,000 buildings, 637,000 into N number of teachers. Then that's not the end of it. You need to train those teachers. You need to incentivize them to work in the rural areas, which itself is a big challenge. Coming to higher education, we are aware that where the challenges lie. Some of you must have had a good taste of it. The cutoff in the Delhi University went up to 100%. Imagine. Now, it clearly sends a message to the person with 99.9% that you are good for nothing. But is that a fact? The problem is that it's not that those colleges or universities don't want students. They want them. But what do they do? The challenge of space, the quality of faculty. Of course, you can multiply IITs as we have done. But where are the teachers? And that's the reason that even the new IITs need the old IITs as mentors, which also is a big problem. Many IITs are not really able to handle it still. Then coming to supply of human resources for the industry, you need skilled manpower. India at 75, which has been established to ensure that India becomes a developed nation by the year 2022. They say that we'll have the largest skilled and the best manpower by 2020. That's how we'll really become a developed nation. But that's a tall order given the facts that we need a lot of training institutions. You need people who are really fit enough to train people. And besides that, at present, there is a large manpower who are skilled in their jobs, but they are not formally educated. Of course, they are real experts in their jobs, but they are doomed to be there for all times to come. These were the problems I just highlighted in front of you. Now coming to the solutions part with a global perspective. We have our illustrious son of India, Dr. APJ Kalam, Abdul Kalam, the former president of the country, who is really concerned about people not only in the country, also people globally, and that's how he came up with this notion of empowering 3 billion people. And one of his projects was the Pan-African E-Network project, which he offered to the African continent when he was the president of India. And this particular project has really opened the global perspective, how things can be done at the global scale. And we at TCIL have been lucky to implement this project for the government of India. And at present, this project has gained a lot of acclaims. It's been one of the most successful projects in the world. More than 10,000 students from 48 countries in Africa are enrolled in live face-to-face classroom sessions in a virtual environment. And apart from the formal degrees which people receive on this particular network from some of the leading universities of India, and there is a provision for continued medical education for the doctors of Africa from 12 leading hospitals of India. And in order to ensure that this particular quality is sustained even after this project is completed, it's 6.5 years, and Africa takes over 5 leading super specialty hospitals, 1 in each region of Africa, and 5 universities. They'll be part of this network to ensure that they take it forward. And this particular concept has really shown us the way forward in education, that is leveraging technology for spreading education. And this gave rise to further networks. We also implemented SARC Tele-Education Network. Then there is a demand from CLMV countries, and that's where the next project is going to start. Eurasia, PSIDSC nations, that is the Pacific Small Island nations, CARICOM countries, that is where the demand is coming. And now even on commercial terms, there is a demand for GulfNet, which otherwise nobody would have thought about, linking the Gulf nations to India. That is how we go on a global perspective. Now coming to this particular project, it has generated a lot of ideas, a lot of thought process, and solutions to all the challenges that we face. In the primary education sector, it can be done through e-education. All that you need is a local facilitator. Instead of having so many teachers, you have a local facilitator from the same village who's a local village boy. He can be trained in the operation of the equipment, the IT equipment, and the education actually flows from a central location so that the quality from the best of the teachers in the country can go to all the students in the entire nation. Coming to higher education, as I mentioned, the limitations are due to space, faculty. We implemented a project for University of Madras, wherein because their Marina Beach campus is limited, they cannot take too many students. This challenge is true of all the universities. So we help them have education from 10 centers in the same city. Now they have multiplied their university by 10, same faculty delivering the lectures, and the students have a face-to-face interaction, ask questions, submit their assignments online. So it has really taken care of the challenge I mentioned, the higher education, of that 100% cutoff. Coming to human resources for the industry, there are a lot of challenges. Yes, we can use again the e-education there, same way, because quality is something which is very important from the skilled manpower development, and practicals remains a big challenge. Now with robotics, simulation, even these challenges can be met. Now, coming to education for the skilled manpower, the government has taken a good initiative in the form of National Skill Development Corporation, and wherein a person, a mechanic who was inducted into this area at the age of 10 and he has become an expert in this field, he also can go in for a sort of a formal education, and starting from a certificate course to a diploma to a degree to post-graduation. He's an expert, he can do a research, have his IPRs on that. Now, what can be done globally? As we have seen from the Pan-African model, sharing of knowledge, then content development, that's a major challenge, as Mr. Khare also mentioned. Let us not be too protective. Let us share this content. There can be digital libraries, and every person, whether he's from remote village in India or Timbuktu or a developed nation, should have access to these digital libraries where content can be developed in a coordinated, proactive manner by experts. And besides that, to take care of the local population, we can have content in local languages, regional languages. Apart from this, for e-networks also, there is a scope for improvisation in the technology. The compression techniques and bandwidth can lower the cost of delivery, and we can simplify on the delivery mechanisms, have single devices instead of having too many IT components which become difficult to handle. It can be a simple device, and these things have already come into the market. So I see a lot of potential for cooperation at the global scale. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Waklu. I now request Dr. Ashwini Kumar Sharma, who is Managing Director, National Institute of Electronics and Information Technology, for his speech.
Good afternoon, everybody. Chairperson, Mr. Khare, expert, Mr. Waklu, Mr. Dr. Pascal, and August gathering over here. See, I am heading an organization basically which was well known in the field of education in IT, which is basically O level, A level, B level. Previously, it used to be known as DOE ACC. It is an organization under the administrative control of Department of Electronics and Information Technology. Now, recently, when I have taken over the charge almost 8 months back, we got the name changed to transform to National Institute of Electronics and Information Technology. And I could find that this, after mushrooming of the private engineering colleges, we were finding difficult to get students to our courses, because DOCC, so-called now NILET, is basically well known for accreditation of institutes for running multiple IT courses. And we have got almost 800 institutes which are accredited with us. But then subsequently, since I am basically from the industry where I have been executing e-governance project and IT projects, I could know that when we were used to interview candidates, and especially in the field of e-governance, it was very difficult to find anyone. Because what is happening is, if you see the government basic mission and vision is that we have to ensure delivery of the services at the doorstep of the citizens using the ICT, using in a transparent method, in an economic method. Now, when we are talking about e-governance, we find the E is very small letter, the governance G is a big capital letter, which itself is indicative that the technology component is very less. It is almost 10 to 15%, and the major component is the governance component, which means a person who knows the governance, then he employs or he use the tool and ICT for implementation of the decision making or for taking the decisions. So with this view, basically I thought, why not to diversify in the field of e-governance capacity building also. And I must agree over here on the platform that I am thankful to the Ministry of Department of Administrative Reforms and Public Grievances that they could had a discussion with me and finally gave us the proposal that let's go with the capacity building for all central government employees in the field of e-governance. Now once I am saying again e-governance, the basic purpose is not to teach the governance, because that is well known to them. They know better than me, they know better than the faculties. What is more important is to change the mindset. Why I am saying this, all this is basically, we are thinking of capacity building either in formal sector, non-formal sector. Let me tell you, the demand is very high. Today it is a demand of the time that we need to plan it out to change the mindset. That's the most important. Let's say a very simple case, change management. As on date, today also in government we follow the old procedures set by the Britishers. Even if you will find in number of the manuals, you will find you are entitled to travel by the first class. Now, there is no manufacturing of first class for last 10-15 years. But still it is being written. And it is the accountant to decide whether he pass your bill once you travel by second AC or first AC. He will say, no sir, rule says it is first class, you have traveled by second class, so I cannot do that. So what I am saying is this, basically, we have to make the change management. Similarly, process engineering. Now, these are the sectors where there is a heavy demand, there is a huge potential where we can diversify in the capacity building, which can be again a formal sector, which can be a non-formal sector. Because number of IITs, even IIMs, they have started 1 year diploma, 1.5 year diploma in e-governance management, because that's the challenge which is coming up before the government, that planning a project, implementing a project is a different thing, but owning a project is the toughest job. It is very simple to say you implement this thing, but once those who have done project on the field, they know you have to face a lot of challenges. Similarly, technology management. Now, technology adaptation is one thing, but to manage and to maintain that is another skill set which is required. Like for example, very simple, if you have to buy a hardware, you can buy hardware by placing an order. But if you have to maintain the network within the organization, or you have to maintain a hardware within the organization, you have to either call for a AMC agency, or you have to train your engineers. And still once you train your engineers, that in-house trained engineer will not be in a position to give you a better service than the service which a AMC provider can give, because he can manage spares, he can have a better technology approach. So there are a number of sectors which are coming up. Now, since the topic says digital literacy, and that is the reason when I joined over there within a span of 2-3 months, I took the decision, then I have submitted the proposal to my management board chaired by the Honorable Minister Kapil Sibal Saab, and where we said that the tagline for knowledge shall be digital literacy for all. Because this is the time, whether you are literate or not literate, as in the morning Honorable Minister also said, that this is a time where we will say whether you know digital literacy, or whether you are aware how to open a mail, do you know how to send a fax. That's the time which is coming up. You may not know how to write your name, you may not know how to sign, but if you know how to take a thumb impression, you can do well. Because things are changing. Even now if you see, as Mr. Baklu says, that time has changed where we have to plan out basically on online systems. And that's the reason I also took an initiative in my organization. I said we'll do only registration for online. We may get a drop in the number of students. That is possible. Because once you go for online, those who are sitting at the remote area may not be in a position to apply. For that, what we have done, we have used the Government of India project, that is CSC, Common Service Center network, where we have said that all CSCs will be allowed to go for the online submission of the forms. Similarly, now what is happening is, until unless we basically go for online system of examination, or for the online system of registration, online system for form filling, I think looking to the population of the country, it will be very difficult to reach to the last mileage of the village or the country for the education purpose. And that's the way, if you see the colleges which are going for competitive exams through online system, they are in a better position to go for attracting more students rather than going for the offline exam. See, we have to change the mindset. Even if you talk to a 12th class student, and even if you talk to the parents of that, still they have got a question in their mind that offline questions are simple than online papers. Sometimes they have a doubt, online questions are more simple than offline system. And that's the way we have to make a change in the concept, mindset of the population and the public. Now similarly, what is happening is e-content. As Mr. Vaklu said, this is a time where we have to plan out basically the e-content has to be developed. Why I am saying is this, basically if you see the way things are changing, the way mobile has got a penetration. If you see today's paper I was going through, almost 70 crore mobiles are existing in country. I think this is a figure on the paper, but if I remember correctly, we have been referring around 90 crore mobiles are being used. Now see the value and the volume. Now what is happening, if you have got a mobile system, why not to have a contents on the mobile? Because then you can have a penetration to a village older also. I remember very well, as the minister was saying in the morning, that a person knows how to make a call to his son, he doesn't know to dial a number. What he has done, he has registered the numbers, son, daughter, wife, police wala, falana, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He knows if I press 1, I will call to my elder son. If I press 2, I will call to my wife. If I press 3, I will call to my daughter. If I press 4, I will call to my police wala. So what I am saying is, see, the concepts are changing. So what we have to plan, that we have to plan now basically e-contents on mobiles. Because that's the way where we can approach to the best component, where we can approach to the last mileage. Now what is happening is, every state government in a competition is basically declaring we'll give laptops, but where is the basically content on that? That is the second part. Because those laptops, which iPad which you are planning, they are having a different operating system. Even Android, I don't think, more applications are available in the country which are basically meeting to our requirement of education system. So there is a potential where we can diversify in a system where we can develop e-content based on iPads, based on mobiles. Now, fourth is basically, since the NCAN connectivity has been extended to all educational hubs, even NILET also we have made approach, and Department of IT has agreed for the same. We are trying to see that we have to go for a virtual classroom system, because we have got a shortage of quality teachers. And once we are saying we have to go for a quality education, it is most important that the seat must be very good. That means the teacher who is giving the education to us has to be well learned. And definitely the system which we are going through, the education system, we are more worried in getting the marks rather than going for a personal development, skill development. I remember very well, I am associated with number of recruitment agencies, number of panels. Whenever we go for an interview, he can answer very good questions which are basically theory based, which are basically book based. Once you go into a practical problem, it is very difficult to find a good guy who can answer the field problem, who can address to the field problem. So now what is required is, this is the NCAN connectivity, or this is the new technology which can provide a tool where we can basically go for a skill development of the students or the new generation which is coming up, which is more based on industry. And that's the reason even the government has started making a mindset. Even Government of India has given a mandate to us that we must start courses in tie-up with industry. Because it is the industry. See, I am not going for education just to get a degree. My final aim is that I must get a good salary, I must get a good employment, I must get married to a good family. Because that's the way, that's the society lives. So for that basically what is more important is to enhance the employability. And for enhancing the employability, it is very important that we have to go for a skill development of the students. I remember in 2002 when I was there in Rajasthan as a managing director of a corporation, we started one course in association with Malviya National Institute of Technology, which is called now MNIT Jaipur. And I took a deputation to that institute as a challenge, and I basically invited applications from all engineering students, irrespective of any branch, saying that anybody who is interested to participate in the course, he has to pay a fees of 1 lakh rupees and has to go through a course of 1 year. And basically there will be 4 sessions. One will be skill development, one will be only one skill development on any one platform, and 6 months will be practical training. I remember I had to listen a lot of music from my all top bureaucracy, from everyone saying nobody will come for 1 lakh rupees. But finally, when I gave an ad, of course I have to involve IITs also in making a system. Once I basically have gone for that, we got almost 600 applications for 40 seats. We conducted the test, we got admissions, and finally first 3 months only we have gone for a skill development. How to face an interview, body language, how to address someone. What happens once you come out from the college, you don't know whether to say sir or madam, even sometimes you say bhaiya, bhabhi, chachi, mama. See, this is all basically because what is happening, you are never being groomed. See, ragging takes place, but that's a different diversion which has taken place now. But that was the basic purpose when in the college time, I remember the ragging used to be there just to make you feel how to address someone. Now that has changed because the concept has got changed. Now that's the only way we can do skill development within the fresh guys who are coming out from the college. Now once they go through the skill development, how to address, how to dress up yourself. I remember when in 1987 I have gone for an interview in America. I remember I have gone for an interview with an American company, and I dressed up with a colored t-shirt and some tie. And when I have gone for an interview, I was told you are not selected. Then I asked to the person who has placed me for the placement, he has not asked me any technical question, how he can reject me. He said it is purely on your dress. Then he told me you have to put on light shirt and dark color, blouse. What I am saying is, these are the things which basically we have to plug into our youth who are coming up. In case we have to go for a placement in a good company and a working business. Now, secondly is, what is happening is we are teaching in the school, colleges, all multiple subjects, and he becomes jack of all, master of none. That's the biggest problem which we are finding. I do agree, he must know what is social science, he must know mathematics, he must know engineering, he must know civil also. But one platform he is supposed to know. Because the last question any interviewer asks is always is that, tell me your expert subject. And the moment you ask expert subject, you find he is not able to say, he says sometimes networking, sometimes he says C, sometimes he says Windows. Even if you go through, I think all of you, if you get the biodata, you will find in the biodata he will write expert in Windows, expert in Word, expert in Excel, expert in Lotus, expert in presentation. These are not the expertise. These are the tools basically which we are using. So I think if we are planning for an education system, and especially we are saying digital literacy for all, we have to somewhere plan out some course curriculum, maybe 2 hours, 3 hours, 1 year, 6 months, 3 months, depending upon the profile of the candidate, depending upon the curriculum which is going through, but we have to go for a skill development. And that's the reason half of us, maybe more than half of us, plan to get our kid admitted to a private engineering college, private schools or public school. One of the reasons is that we do understand, at least they will try to teach them some etiquettes, something about global this thing. So I think this is the time where definitely we have to use the technology to ensure that we are able to reach to the last mileage, and definitely we have to plug in some changes in our course curriculum, we have to make some changes in our education system also. Like for example, the Government of India has come out with a new scheme of NVEQ, National Vocational Educational Quality Framework. One of the reasons for that framework is basically the credit keeps on adding. For example, in BITS planning, I remember there is a system that if I do something, I can change my branch from second year to third year, from electronics to computer science. If I got some credit this month, that credit will get forwarded to that. Because now, basically the requirement of the youth is the job. And for that, basically, we have to allow him to diversify, because see what happens, if I remember correctly, I was very keen to go for an arts, but I was taught since beginning, from the birth, from when I started understanding, you have to become an engineer, you have to become an engineer. So you started diversifying for mathematics or something like that. So now things are changing, time is changing. Our kids, our youth, they are basically more advanced than us. I remember my son who is in now engineering college, he knows better than me how to operate YouTube, and he knows better than me how to operate Facebook. Because see what is happening, they are very creative, they have got ample time to do, we are more busy in business and all these things. So we have to work out a system in the education system where we have to use the technology. With these words, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sharma. I now request Dr. Pascal to give his views, and then we'll have an open discussion for say 10 to 15 minutes. I'll request the organizers that we may extend this session for at least another 20 minutes, if all of you agree.
Thank you. So you have been speaking about interview, and I think I will bring some answer to the interview, because the main thing is about the way we are learning, and we will reply to interview in the same way that what you have learned, you know. And if we are in a textbook learning, then we'll reply to the interview in a textbook manner. So which is why, see, I am in a dilemma, because we have decided to have 8 minutes. I had 3 items to present, and then I have to select which one I am presenting. I find myself in the position of someone who is interviewed. There was this guy interviewed, and he was not asked question about his expertise in this subject or whatever, just get a riddle to solve, which was, you know, he's in his car, goes through a bus station, and there are 3 people in this bus station. One is a old lady nearly dying, near to die. Another is his old friend who has saved his life one day. And the third person is the woman of his life. So now he has only one seat for the passenger. Then which one he will take? That was the question in the interview. So, you know what he said? The person who has been selected, he said, I give my key to my old friend, then he can take the old lady to the hospital, and I stay in the bus station with the woman of my life. So, in the same way, I have to find a shortcut, a good answer to this spot on which I am, and I have decided that I will I will present 2 short films of 3 minutes each, which will make 6 minutes, and I will have still 1 minute to discuss about the film. So is it possible to start from there? No, I have to start from here. The grade 7. Just give me 20 seconds. I want you to, what we'll do is we'll go inside the black box. It is something that we hardly do. There is some resistance to go inside the classroom. Now, I want also you to notice that it is in our school, Mahatma Gandhi International School, which was a municipal school, which has been integrated much before the RTE, children from very, very underprivileged section beside very upper class children. And I want you just to notice how the interactions are built. I want also to say that this is active learning, this is experiential learning, that the learning is arriving through peer-to-peer interaction, and I ask you to notice how this learning is happening and how this diversity of socio-economical background and socio-cultural background of the children is helping the learning to happen. So we will start that, and we will make some comment after. Grade 7? Yeah, it is my, no. I don't know. The film. Okay, then, okay. No, this is the PPT, the film. So you will, I want you to notice also the use of the space, how the space is used. This is in 3 minutes, this is a teaser. There are full film which are going on. Yeah. They are full film, it's 42 hours of classes which is condensed in 3 minutes, and just enjoy.
He wants to say something. We really know much about it. We just see it as something like that's really gross and stuff.
Okay, so you mean love? Or love is gross, or boys are gross, or girls are gross?
No.
Who is gross?
The most dangerous word which has 3 letters. Is there consistency in the place where nobody is allowed to touch? Yes? And below the stomach area? And the girls don't like to touch in the chest area. Yes. Right. Because there is some changes in our body.
Yeah, like what?
Yes, sir. Yes.
So this is really what is happening in the classroom. Now, in the children you have seen there are all a range of children coming from the highest, the most cultural family of the city, the richest one, and the children from the poorest of the poorest, and they are interacting together, and I bet anyone to point who is from where. So the pedagogy is really, we are supposed to speak about harmony and integration. The pedagogy, the way of teaching, is the answer to, to create a secular society, to create children who are growing together, who understand each other. So another thing also you have noticed maybe is how this diversity is helping each other to understand, and how this child, this eureka moment which is happening, yeah, my God, I've seen it. So now I'm suggesting that this was, of course, a very difficult aspect, because it is about sexual education, body awareness, and I think as with the situation of today, with the news and the actuality that all of us know, I think it's something very important, difficult to treat in the classroom, but so important, and maybe if we go deeper into that, maybe we'll have to face less of this evil which are happening there. So the next thing is about a more cognitive aspect. This was a broad one. You have seen how we use science, maths, arts, and the body, how the body is used, which will allow these children, when they will face an interview, to face the public and to be able to interact. Now we'll go into, with the same methodology, experiential learning, to something much more cognitive. It's about standard 5, learning multiplication table. You see, it's something extremely basic, and you will see that the same methodology, the same way of learning can be applied. No. How do I go to the film? I don't know how to use that. Someone can come? That's the PPT. I want the second film. There is a second film. Because PPT is out, because I've explained, there was an interview, 3 people, and I can take only 2 of this. One is out. My friend has taken the key for that. So, that's the second film. There's another film. Matt, yeah, right.
This is the Mahatma Gandhi International School, where we're learning the concept of multiplication in grade 5. You can see a diverse use of everyday materials such as beads, use of space and movement, and also group interaction. From the chaos of free play, which the children love, we move to more structured exploration by creating patterns. We thus progress from concrete play to learning abstract maths concepts. By connecting the body to materials, we make links between the inner world of the learner and the external environment. Now we proceed to the language of maths. At our school, we have one motto: make it a game. Children again use their bodies to learn math symbols, which is also a language. So different senses are used to bring in different ways to learn. Multiplication tables become fun and easy to learn. Through experiential learning, children learn cognitive concepts and also develop life skills. At Mahatma Gandhi International School, we are learning all the time. Here are grade 11 students learning filmmaking.
So, by the way, all the music which are in this film are done by our student. This is our original music. So, you have seen at the end of this film that there are other students of older grade who are making film. It is part also of their project which is filmmaking, and they are learning math, physics, and technology through making film. So these films are meant for, of course, it's just teaser what you have seen. We have the long film, we have a full series, and we are continuing to do that. They are meant for teacher training, because we find that the best way of conduct teacher training is to show what can happen in the classroom in terms of experiential learning, instead of speaking about that. So I thank you to have listened to me.
Thank you, Dr. Pascal. I would have preferred to have a much longer duration of discussion, but I suppose we can still have at least 12 to 15 minutes of question answers or interventions or suggestions. But before I open the house, let me share some of the common thoughts which have come from all the panelists. First, I think, is the issue of capacity building at all levels. The second, which Mr. Waklu and also the other fellow panelists pointed out, is about development of quality teachers. A third is about the e-content. Hardware is important, but at every level, the content has to be developed. The fourth, of course, is the online system, which was emphasized by Dr. Sharma. The fifth, equally important, is the management of change. You know, technology is important, but it's also important how do we use that technology, how do we bring about change, change in the mindset, change in the system. And to add to it is the synergy between different systems. Mr. Waklu mentioned about the Pan-Africa e-network, which is a very great achievement for India. And let me just inform you that Indira Gandhi National Open University is now building on it, and the Ministry of External Affairs, HRD and IGNOU are working on an India-Africa virtual university, which will be through the Pan-Africa e-network, which has been developed by TCIL. So we should be working and looking for synergy amongst different systems when we transform from the conventional methods to the newer system which use technology. I would stop at this, and the house is open. Anybody who wishes to make any intervention, comment, suggestion, you are most welcome. I'll request the organizers if somebody could pass on the mic at the back.
Thank you very much, sir, for giving me some opportunity to intervene. I may introduce myself. I am formerly faculty, Indian Institute of Foreign Trade, where I worked for about 26 years. After that, I was director, Fortune Institute of International Business. My field of operation has been international business management. I find that quite a number of institutions have been opened with IB, MBA, IB. But the curriculum which they are giving, that is not adequate to protect the interest of industry, how to help the industry in documentation, logistics, international marketing. All those operations require live examples, latest situation. This information technology has been a big help to those exporters and importers. Now India is having lot of imports, and we are not having any course on import management. How to manage imports, how to do sourcing, international sourcing. We are big importers. So I suggest when we are trying to impart skill to the graduates in our MBA programs, we must take into consideration while developing the curriculum and with the help of international business industry, producers in the country, and importers and exporters. Thank you very much, sir.
Can we have 2-3 questions, and then the panel would reply at one go so that it will save time?
Can I go ahead? I'm an educator from Bangalore. I have a question for Dr. Shazzo. Well, this is with regard to your module on sex education. I have a two-part question. One is, did you have to inform the parents before you did this little module in your school? And if you did or didn't, did you wait for a feedback from them after the module was conducted? And what was that feedback like? Thank you.
Anybody else?
Hi, my name is Ganesh. I represent an organization called Easy Vidya. I think the chair summed up the discussions very well. I just want to ask the experienced panelists on, one is the proliferation of technology, and the other challenge is the quality of teachers. So is there any specific initiative where empowering teachers has happened through technology at a large scale business, at a large scale? We have done several experiments, but I should say that we ended up in failure rather than successes. So I would like to know from your experience, is there a large scale teacher empowerment through technology?
We'll now request Dr. Sharma to reply. Do we have somebody, one more question?
Yeah, so there is a small question. My name is Hannan Ahmad, and I represent Education World. My request to Mr. Sharma, sir, where you spoke about the e-governance and told that E is very small letter than capital G. But sir, E means education and enhancement both. How do you help to better governance being in a small E letter? Thank you.
I'll request Mr. Sharma to reply to the first and the last question.
Can we take one more
question to Dr. Pascal?
Can we take?
And then we'll come to the teachers' issue. It's a very important issue. I'd like to spend a minute or so on that.
Can we take one more question, sir?
Maybe after this?
Oh, sure.
Okay, let it be the last question. We'll have 5 questions. And
yes, sir. This is to you, sir. I am Colonel Shekhar. I represent school education from Atul Vidyalaya. What are the key initiatives taken by the Ministry of HRD in terms of school education per se and moving it forward in the broadest way possible? I am trying to cover, if it's possible, RTE, its impact, teachers training, how do we move forward, and what is the role of the non-governmental and the private sector, and how can we contribute to making this happen? Thank you, sir.
The first question basically was related with how to go for basically interfacing a real practical knowledge. Hello. Yeah. Now what is happening is, if you see for the last 2-3 years, already Government of India has basically set up sector skills. Now what is happening is, in the formal sector as well as non-formal sectors, or all the course curriculum which we are planning or we are working out, especially in the professional courses, we are going through sector skills only. For example, there is a sector skill for IT, there is a sector skill for electronics, there is a sector skill for management, there is a sector skill for trade management. Now what is happening is, see, it is a fact also that teaching somebody how to drive motorcycle on blackboard is a 1-minute job. This I always say in my all speeches, because you have to just plug in the key and tell to the student that plug in the key, press the clutch, press the accelerator, it will run. So lecture is over. But I am sure within this session that if you give the key to someone and ask him to drive motorcycle, I think it will take 3 to 4 days time. What I mean is, basically driving motorcycle on the road is totally different than driving a motorcycle on the blackboard. That's the reason Government of India as well as the industry, everybody is trying that we have to go for a PPP model where we have to tie up, where the education institutes or those who are planning the course curriculum, those who are, see, basic mathematics knowledge, basic English knowledge is totally different. But then how to address someone is a different, because it keeps on changing from face to face, from person to person, from country to country, from sex to sex. So what is happening is, we have to basically go for a system where we have to go for a partnership with the industry, whether it is IT, whether it is electronics, whether it is mechanical or it is civil. So that's the reason Government of India is very keen, and that's the reason even, for example, NASSCOM has been made as a sector skill for IT courses. NILET, we are playing a role in IT development. Similarly, there are a number of sector skills being planned out where the industry is playing a major role, so that they basically come out with the idea and the course curriculum and they give their input. For example, as you said, documentation. That is one of the lagging part in the Indian IT industry, which we do not follow. We are very good in mathematics by gene, we are very good in arithmetics, we are very good in logistics. We do the solution within 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, but we do not write anything. If you see the Japanese management style, you will find they always carry a small diary in their pocket, spiral banded. And this I learned there when I went there, that they keep on writing whatever you say. And when I ask them, they say after the Hiroshima war, they lost everything. And from that time, they have taken a decision that we have to document everything. So, see, you are right logically that we have to make a system in our education system where we have to go in a collaborative way. Now, my answer to fourth question is, you are perfectly right that e-governance, E is small. When I am saying E, I am indicating electronic. When I am saying G, I am indicating the governance part. What we are trying, basically the role which we are playing is, to take, governance means basically decision making or implementation of the decisions. Now to make it more transparent, more reliable, more economical, but that's the basic. Good governance is basically can be led by e-governance. That's the general phrase every politician uses. If you have to go for a good governance, you have to go for e-governance. One of the reasons is because that's the only government, that's the only mechanism which E can play, that it can make a governance as a smart. When I am saying smart, simple, modular, responsive, transparent. So that's the reason. So definitely we are basically trying to build in within the politicians. I remember Honorable Minister from Bihar was there. We conducted one-day training for the Honorable Cabinet of the Bihar, where basically we have taught them how to use a laptop, how to send a mail, how to see message coming or how to download a message. So basically it's an education system where we are trying to cultivate the E component in the e-governance, in the governance activity, so to make it a transparent, speedy and more responsive. Thank you.
So there was 3 questions. The first is about the authorization from the parent. Obviously, any picture I screen in public, I have a written authorization from the parent. This is the basic of any ethical practice, and I will never screen a picture, still or movie of
Sorry, not about the movie. When you did the module with the students, before you did the module, did you have to inform the parents that you were going to do something like this with the students?
Oh, I don't understand your question. Why? Yeah.
We did a module on sex education for your students.
Yeah. Mm.
Before you did that, I'm assuming it's during a regular class.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Did you have to send a notification to the parents saying that you were going to do this in class, or was it like a regular biology class?
Yeah, it is of course a regular class, obviously, because there is absolutely nothing which justifies to ask pre-authorization in what they are doing here.
There are some governments, especially state governments, that don't give us the liberty or the authorization to conduct a sex education class without asking permission from parents. I just wondered if that
Okay.
was something.
No, there is no issue of that sort. Absolutely not. Because these are part of the regular class, and in any case, whatever you do in the class is always, the moment you have a mixed group, it's always about the genders, it's always about, if we start asking authorization to conduct basic activity in the classroom, then we cannot conduct any activity. So about the authorization, of course, has to be there from the parent in return the moment you film the children and you intend to screen it, like it is happening here in a forum, education forum, and that's obviously is very important. So about the feedback from the parent, we see in our report card, in our the assessment system, there is always assessment from the child himself or herself about each and every activity which is conducted. There is assessment from the peer. There is assessment feedback system, assessment and feedback system from the family, not only the parent but the surrounding family, because here we are facing, in any case, a joint family where you have also the uncles and the auntie and even much more. And we are taking as many feedback as possible on short term, middle term, and long term. And we take, of course, the assessment and the feedback from the person, the teacher who are in charge of that. So now, if you ask me about what feedback, the feedback is extremely valid, but the fact that our parents are very keen to keep their children in our school, the fact that they speak about our school in such a way that we are flooded by demand every year and we cannot answer the demand of admission which are coming, I think it's a feedback which says that the parents are aware of the importance of this type of education and what it does to the children. And as far as the long-term feedback is concerned, we see it in the result of the way our children are moving after the 12th standard, because it's a K-12 school. And we were speaking about the GER, the gross enrollment ratio, which is around 15% at the national level. In our school, it's 100%. All our students who reach 12th standard continue further education, and whatever their background, socioeconomical, sociocultural, or else is. So and not only that, but they go to the first choice they are doing. They are really doing what they like to do. They are extremely successful in the program they are following, and we receive feedback from the institution who are receiving our students, university, higher level institution, and they find our students extremely able to analyze, to understand, to resolve problems, and to face what was discussed, any interview or any interaction with others. Then, we have a series of feedback, which is not only from the parent, but from the entire. I think it's what is important to know what is the result of such a pedagogy. So I have shown the body awareness module, but it's one of the module of the regular module, and you have seen that the math, and obviously I will not ask authorization from the parent to teach the multiplication table.
But this is something that's very peculiar to India, that there are some states that don't authorize sex education.
I know what you are referring to.
Friends, we have already taken too much of your time. We are already at 1:45. I'll exercise at least self-discipline as the chairman. I'll take only 2 minutes because 2 questions are not responded as of now. One is about teachers. It's a very major issue, not only for our country, but across the world. There are shortages of more than 1 million teachers in the primary sector. At the higher education, again, there are shortages of 30 to 40% in every institution. I will not be able to do justice to this subject in a minute or so, but just let me inform you that the government has decided to launch a national mission on teachers and teaching, comprising both school and higher education, which will be looking at the recruitment policies, continuous professional development, and also the use of technology. And that brings me to the question which was asked from the backside about the successful use of technology. Yes, IIT Bombay, led by Professor Pathak, who was awarded Padma Shri this year, they had a teachers training program for 10,000 teachers through technology. But there are 2 caveats which also I'd like to highlight here. One is that this technology is able to supplement, but it cannot be in lieu of a good teacher. The technology will never be able to replace a good teacher. But if you have teachers, their quality perhaps be improved through this type of 10,000 teachers or similar workshops. The second is about the content. Particularly when you go to the higher levels, there is variety of courses, there are differences between universities, within institutions. We cannot have a standard type of content which starts from Delhi and ends up in Itanagar. Technologically, yes, it is possible that we will beam from here and it will be, we are developing this African Institute, and one of the important points which was raised by many people, and the focus so far was to bring children to school. But now after RTE, and many of you must have heard or read about the PISA survey reports, that the level of learning, perhaps we don't rank I mean, to be very frank, we rank amongst the lowest who were participating in the PISA survey. Even NCERT surveys have shown that the level of learning remains a matter of great concern. Linked to it is the teachers' training. Almost 90% of the teachers' training institutes are now in the private sector. So there is a great deal of improvement which is required here through the private initiatives and through the civil society organizations for improvement of quality. It was a very useful and as a policy maker sitting in the ministry, I must say that these interventions and your contributions of my fellow panelists and from the audience was very useful. I thank you and the organizers, and I'm sorry that we started at 12:30 and that is why we are ending now at almost 1:40 p.m. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for participating and being a part of this session. As a little token of appreciation and gratitude, we have mementos. If we can have the mementos on the dais, please. Along with the mementos, we are also giving a photo frame to all our distinguished speakers. I request the session chair, Mr. Amit Khare, to kindly give the memento to Dr. Pascal Chasset. To Dr. Ashwini Kumar Sharma, Managing Director, NEELIT, and to Mr. Vimal Waklu, Chairman and Managing Director, TCIEL. And I request Dr. Sharma to present, to kindly present the memento and the photo frame to our respected session chair, Shri Amit Khare, Joint Secretary, MHRD, who kept the importance of time and made sure that the sessions run on time. We now are taking a lunch break and we will be having a networking lunch and a visit to Expo. We shall be returning sharp at 2:30 if possible, because we are all running late, so it will be good if we start the next session by 2:30. I apologize for the inconvenience, but this next session, school education track, will be happening in the same very hall, and the topic is Education 3.0. Also, those who want to attend the higher education track, it is a very interesting session on fostering excellence